Jason Carter stepped off the transport ship, his boots touching the sleek, polished floor of Zenith Prime Academy's grand arrival hall. The moment he stepped forward, silence fell over the massive space. Hundreds of alien students, each from advanced and highly intelligent species, turned to stare at him. Whispers rippled through the crowd like a wave. A Deathworlder. Here, the very idea seemed absurd to them. Humans were from Earth, the Death World. A world so hostile, so unpredictable, that no sane species would dare live there. Yet here he was, walking through the halls of the most prestigious academy in the galaxy. Jason felt their stares like knives against his skin, but he kept his expression neutral. He had expected this. Ever since he was accepted into the academy, he knew he would not be welcomed. The Galactic Council had forced Zenith Prime to admit him, claiming it was an experiment in galactic unity. But Jason knew the truth. They didn't want unity. They wanted to see if a human could survive here. They wanted to test him like some kind of specimen in a lab. A tall, blue-skinned alien stepped into his path, looking down at him with a mixture of curiosity and disgust. "You're the Deathworlder, aren't you?" The alien sneered. "I thought you'd be taller." A few students around them chuckled, their eyes glinting with amusement. Jason didn't react. He had learned long ago that responding to taunts only gave bullies more power. Instead, he stepped around the alien and kept walking. The laughter faded as students realized he wasn't going to play their game. At the entrance to the main building, a floating drone scanned him and confirmed his identity. The doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the breathtaking interior of the academy. Towering glass windows overlooked a planet filled with lush gardens and floating cities. The air smelled faintly of something metallic, yet strangely fresh. Every step Jason took echoed in the grand hallway. He felt small here, surrounded by creatures far larger, stronger, and more advanced than him. But he wasn't afraid. He had survived Earth. He could survive this. A voice crackled over the academy's intercom. "New students report to the orientation hall immediately." Jason followed the crowd, keeping to the edges where he could observe without drawing too much attention. As he walked, he overheard snippets of conversation. "They say humans are violent. I heard they can survive wounds that would kill any of us. Did you see his eyes? So small, so weak. Why did the council let him in?" Jason ignored them. He had one job here: prove that humans were more than what the galaxy believed. The orientation hall was massive, filled with thousands of students from dozens of species. A holographic projection of the academy's head administrator, a four-armed being with golden eyes, appeared above the stage. "Welcome to Zenith Prime Academy," the administrator began in a deep, regal voice. "You are the brightest minds of your generation, the future of the galaxy. But know this, only the strongest will succeed here." Jason felt the weight of those words. Strength. That was all that mattered in this place. Not kindness, not intelligence, only strength. As the speech continued, Jason noticed a few students glancing at him, whispering among themselves. He recognized the looks. They weren't just curious. They were planning something. The moment orientation ended, Jason barely took 2 steps before someone shoved him from behind. He stumbled forward but quickly regained his balance. Laughter erupted around him. He turned to see a massive reptilian student grinning down at him. "You don't belong here, Deathworlder," the reptilian said, his deep voice rumbling like thunder. "You should leave before someone breaks you." Jason met his gaze and smirked. "Try it." The laughter stopped. The reptilian's grin faltered for a second before twisting into a scowl. He took a step forward. But before he could do anything, a voice interrupted. "That's enough." A female student with silver skin and glowing eyes stepped between them. She looked at Jason, then at the reptilian. "If you start a fight here, you'll be expelled on your first day." The reptilian hesitated, then let out a low growl. "This isn't over, human. He turned and stalked away. Jason exhaled slowly. He knew this was only the beginning. They wanted to see him fail. They wanted to prove he didn't belong. But Jason wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. Let them come. He would show them what a Deathworlder could do. Jason spent his first night at Zenith Prime Academy in silence, lying on the stiff mattress of his assigned dormitory. The room was small, sterile, and far too quiet. Back on Earth, he had grown used to the hum of city life, the distant rumble of traffic, the occasional shout from the streets, the comforting presence of chaos. Here there was nothing but an eerie stillness. He barely slept. His instincts kept him on edge, waiting for something to happen. Morning arrived with a chime from the Academy's automated system. The walls of his room shifted, displaying a soft blue light that mimicked a sunrise. Jason sat up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Today was his first real challenge, combat evaluation. He dressed quickly, pulling on the standard-issue uniform given to all students, a sleek, form-fitting suit designed to adjust to various alien physiologies. It felt too light, almost fragile. He missed the sturdy fabric of his old clothes. As he stepped into the main hallway, students were already moving toward the training grounds. Some walked in groups, chatting excitedly. Others, like Jason, moved alone. The moment he entered the outdoor training area, dozens of heads turned in his direction. The whispers started again. Look, the Deathworlder actually showed up. I wonder if he knows what he's gotten himself into. This will be over quick. Jason ignored them and kept walking. The training ground was a massive open space, with shimmering barriers sectioning off multiple combat arenas. Floating drones hovered above, scanning and recording every movement. In the center of the field, an instructor stood waiting, a towering insectoid alien with razor-sharp limbs and glowing red eyes. Students, the instructor's voice clicked and echoed through the space. Today we assess your combat potential. You may be intelligent, but intelligence alone does not guarantee survival. You will each fight an opponent of your choosing. No weapons, no armor, just your bodies and your instincts. A murmur of excitement ran through the crowd. Jason felt eyes locking onto him. They wanted to see how the human would fare. The instructor continued, his mandibles clicking. Who challenges first? Almost immediately, a familiar voice rang out. I challenge the Deathworlder. Jason turned to see the massive reptilian from the day before stepping forward. The creature grinned, his sharp teeth glinting under the artificial light. The crowd reacted with quiet anticipation. The instructor's red eyes flickered. Accepted. Enter the arena. Jason took a breath and stepped inside the glowing ring. The moment he crossed the boundary, a force field activated behind him. There was no backing out now. The reptilian cracked his knuckles, rolling his thick shoulders. Let's see if the rumors about humans are true. Jason didn't respond. He shifted his stance, light on his feet, watching every movement of his opponent. The reptilian had reach, power, and probably more experience fighting alien opponents. But Jason had something else, Earth's brutal, unpredictable combat style. The moment the fight began, the reptilian lunged forward, swinging a massive fist toward Jason's head. Jason ducked, barely avoiding the strike. He felt the wind rush past his ear. That punch could have caved in his skull. He didn't wait. Jason moved fast, stepping into his opponent's space and slamming his fist into the reptilian's ribcage. It was like hitting solid rock. The alien barely flinched. Pathetic, the reptilian sneered, swinging his other arm in a wide arc. Jason twisted his body, barely dodging the attack. But his opponent was fast, faster than Jason expected. A heavy tail whipped around and struck him square in the chest. Jason flew backward, landing hard against the force field. Pain exploded through his ribs, but he forced himself up. The crowd laughed. The reptilian grinned. You should have stayed on your little death world, human. Jason wiped blood from the corner of his mouth and exhaled sharply. They were underestimating him. Just because he was smaller. Just because he didn't have thick scales or razor-sharp claws. Fine. Let them think that. The reptilian charged again, overconfident. This time, Jason didn't dodge. At the last second, he moved forward, slipping under the alien's reach. He drove his elbow into the reptilian's knee joint. Hard. A sickening crack filled the air. The reptilian howled in pain, stumbling forward. Jason didn't give him time to recover. He twisted, using the alien's momentum against him, and drove his entire body weight into a precise strike, right at the base of the skull. The reptilian crashed onto the ground, unmoving. The arena went dead silent. Jason stood over his fallen opponent, breathing hard. He glanced at the stunned faces around him. They had expected a slaughter. They had expected the human to be broken. Instead, they had just witnessed something else entirely. Jason stepped back and spoke, his voice calm. Not so pathetic now, huh? No one laughed this time. Jason stepped out of the combat arena, his muscles still tense, his ribs aching from the reptilian strike. The crowd remained silent as he walked past, their eyes following him with something new, caution. Before, they had seen him as an anomaly, a weak Deathworlder among the superior species of Zenith Prime Academy. Now, they weren't so sure. His opponent, still groaning in pain, was being lifted off the ground by medical drones. The instructor had said nothing. He had simply watched, his glowing red eyes locked onto Jason, studying him. Jason didn't wait around. He had made his point. By the time he reached the locker rooms, the adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by a deep ache in his chest. He pulled off the training uniform and inspected his side in the mirror. The large, angry bruise was already forming. That tail strike had done some real damage. He exhaled, shaking his head. If he was going to survive here, he needed to get stronger. The door behind him slid open with a soft hiss. Jason turned, expecting another curious student, or maybe someone looking for trouble. Instead, he saw a small bird-like alien standing just inside the doorway. Large, round eyes blinked up at him. "You are injured," the alien said, tilting its head. "You should see a medic." Jason smirked. "I'll be fine." The alien hesitated, then fluttered closer on delicate, talon-tipped feet. "You fought well." Jason raised an eyebrow. This was unexpected. "Thanks." The bird-like alien glanced at the door before speaking again, its voice lower. "They will not forget this. You embarrassed one of the strongest students on the first day. That is dangerous." Jason rolled his shoulders, wincing slightly. "He challenged me. I just made sure I didn't get killed." The alien's feathers ruffled slightly, a nervous gesture. "That does not matter. Strength is respected here, but making enemies is unwise." Jason studied the small creature. It was hard to tell if this was a warning or an attempt at friendship. Either way, it was good to know that someone was willing to talk to him without immediate hostility. "I'm Jason," he said, offering his hand. The bird-like alien hesitated, then carefully extended a clawed hand to shake his. "Lyrian." Jason nodded. "Well, Lyrian, I appreciate the advice, but if someone picks a fight, I'm not just going to roll over and let them win." Lyrian clicked his beak softly. "Then you should prepare. You have drawn attention, not just from the students, but from the instructors as well. They are watching you now." Jason sighed. Of course they were. One fight, and suddenly, he was under a microscope. He had spent his whole life proving that humans weren't weak, weren't insignificant. This place was no different. "Good," he said finally. "Let them watch." Lyrian stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head. "Deathworlders, you truly are different." Jason smirked. "Yeah, we are." As Lyrian left, Jason leaned against the wall, thinking. If today was any indication, his time at Zenith Prime Academy was going to be far more difficult than he had expected. He wasn't just another student here. He was a problem, a challenge. And in a school full of elite alien students, he had just painted a target on his back. "You said." Jason walked through the academy halls, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes on him. Whispers followed him wherever he went, but they weren't the same as before. Before the fight, the students had seen him as a curiosity, a weak creature from a death world. Now there was uncertainty in their voices. Some watched him with cautious respect, others with resentment, and some with outright hostility. He had expected this. Beating one of the academy's strongest students on the first day was bound to cause problems. But Jason had no intention of backing down. He had spent his entire life proving that humans weren't weak. He wasn't about to stop now. His first real class was xenobiology, an advanced course on alien physiology, taught by a being that resembled a floating mass of tendrils and glowing eyes. The instructor, Professor Velak, hovered in the center of the large lecture hall, its many limbs moving as it spoke. Life across the stars is diverse, shaped by the conditions of its homeworld, the professor said in a melodic hum. Some species, like the Threxians, evolved for brute strength. Others, like the Calari, developed unparalleled speed. But the most dangerous organisms in the galaxy do not always come from the strongest species, but rather the most adaptable. Jason leaned forward slightly, listening. He had studied alien physiology before, but hearing it from a true expert was different. Professor Valak's many eyes turned toward him. "Which brings us to Deathworlders." A quiet ripple passed through the students. Jason tensed. He had a feeling he knew where this was going. Deathworlders, the professor continued, come from planets that are exceptionally hostile, where only the most resilient life forms survive. They are rare, and most never reach the level of civilization required for space travel. Jason kept his expression neutral, but he could feel the stares intensifying. However, the professor went on. Those that do often defy expectations. The room was silent now. The professor studied Jason for a long moment before continuing the lecture, moving on to other species. But Jason knew the message had been clear. They were watching him, studying him. When the class ended, Jason packed his things quickly, ready to leave. But as he reached the door, a large shadow blocked his path. Human. Jason looked up. Another student, taller than him, built like living stone, with thick, armored skin and glowing eyes. He didn't recognize the species, but he knew the look in the alien's eyes. A challenge. "You humiliated Zarnak," the alien rumbled. "That will not be ignored." Jason sighed. "Look, if this is about..." The alien's massive hand slammed into the wall beside Jason's head, cracking the surface. "You are not welcome here, Deathworlder." The hallway went quiet. Other students stopped to watch. Jason met the alien's gaze, his expression calm. He had seen this before. Bullies were the same everywhere, no matter the species. "Is that so?" Jason said, his voice steady. "Funny. I don't remember asking for your approval." The alien bared his teeth. "You think you are strong because you won one fight." Jason didn't blink. "No. I think I'm strong because I don't need to prove it to you." For a moment, there was silence. Then the alien let out a low growl and stepped back. "Watch yourself, human." Jason exhaled as the massive student walked away. He could feel the tension in the air. This wasn't over. As he turned to leave, he saw Lyrian standing nearby, feathers fluffed in alarm. "You are making more enemies," Lyrian whispered. Jason smirked. "Yeah, I noticed." Lyrian sighed. "You Deathworlders really don't know how to stay unnoticed, do you?" Jason shook his head. "Not really. But then again, if I wanted an easy life, I wouldn't be here." "You said..." Jason knew that trouble would come. He had made too many enemies too quickly. He had embarrassed a top student, stood his ground against a clear threat, and worst of all, he had refused to show fear. To the students of Zenith Prime Academy, That was unacceptable. It didn't take long for things to escalate. At first, it was small things, whispers when he passed, sudden silences when he entered a room. Then it became more obvious. His food tray was accidentally knocked over in the cafeteria. His access codes to certain training rooms mysteriously stopped working. A few students went out of their way to bump into him in the halls, testing him. Jason ignored it. He had dealt with worse back home. But then, it turned physical. It happened after his combat training session. Jason had just finished his workout, his body sore from pushing himself harder than ever. As he stepped into the academy's dimly lit corridors, he noticed how empty it was. Too empty. He wasn't surprised when 3 figures stepped out of the shadows ahead of him. Human, one of them sneered. It was the same stone-skinned alien from before, the one who had threatened him. Behind him stood 2 more students, one with long, clawed fingers, and another with shifting, chameleon-like skin. Jason sighed. Really? We're doing this now? You don't belong here, the stone-skinned alien growled. Time to teach you your place. Jason rolled his shoulders, mentally preparing himself. You sure you want to do this? The alien lunged. Jason sidestepped, just barely avoiding a crushing blow. The force of the strike cracked the floor where he had been standing. He didn't have time to admire the damage. Another attacker came at him from the side, razor-sharp claws slashing toward his ribs. Jason twisted, the claws grazing his shirt but missing his skin. He countered with a quick elbow strike to the creature's side. It let out a surprised grunt, stumbling back. The third opponent moved fast, shifting its body to blend into the shadows before striking. Jason barely managed to block a hit aimed at his head. Pain exploded in his forearm, but he gritted his teeth and pushed forward, slamming his fist into his attacker's chest. The chameleon-like alien staggered back, its camouflage flickering. Jason didn't wait. He turned just in time to see the stone-skinned brute charging again. This time, Jason didn't dodge. He stepped forward, using the alien's momentum against him. At the last second, Jason dropped low and struck the alien's knee, hard. The brute let out a roar of pain as it buckled, crashing to the ground. Jason jumped back, breathing hard. His arms ached. His ribs were sore. But he was still standing. The 3 aliens glared at him, their expressions a mix of anger and disbelief. Not bad for a Deathworlder. The stone-skinned one spat, struggling to rise. Jason smirked. Yeah. Imagine what I could do if I actually tried. Before they could attack again, a voice rang out. Enough. The air in the corridor grew thick with authority. Jason turned and saw an instructor standing at the end of the hallway, tall, imposing, with sharp, insect-like features. You will all report to the disciplinary office, the instructor said, eyes narrowing. Now, Jason sighed. Great, just what I needed. As the instructor led them away, Jason caught sight of Lyrian in the distance, hiding behind a support column. The small bird-like alien gave him a look that clearly said, I told you so. Jason just smirked. Yeah, things were getting complicated. Jason sat in the disciplinary office, arms crossed as he stared at the ceiling. The room was quiet except for the occasional clicking sound coming from the instructor's mandibles as they reviewed the report. The 3 students who had attacked him sat across from him, bruised but silent. You were caught fighting in the academy halls, the instructor finally said, their voice sharp. Do you have anything to say for yourselves? Jason shrugged. Self-defense. The stone-skinned alien, Goric, growled. Lies. The instructor raised a hand, silencing him. The security footage confirms the human did not initiate the fight. Goric clenched his jaw, but said nothing. Jason allowed himself a small smirk. Regardless, the instructor continued, this academy does not tolerate such behavior. You will all receive disciplinary marks, and if there is another incident, there will be consequences. Jason knew that meant different things for him than for the others. They were from powerful families, Privileged students who had grown up knowing they would always have a place here. Jason, on the other hand, was the outsider, the one who didn't belong. One mistake could get him expelled. The instructor dismissed them, and Jason wasted no time getting out of there. As he stepped into the hallway, Lyrian was waiting for him. "You should be more careful," Lyrian said. Jason rolled his eyes. "Oh yeah, what should I have done?" "Let them beat me." Lyrian sighed, ruffling his feathers. "No, but you're making too many enemies too quickly. There are people in this academy who would love an excuse to get rid of you." Jason exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I know." Lyrian hesitated before speaking again. "There's something else. I overheard some students talking. Gorik and his friends aren't done with you. They're planning something." Jason frowned. "What kind of something?" Lyrian shifted uneasily. "I don't know, but they're not just going to let this go." Jason's mind raced. He had already expected retaliation, but hearing it confirmed made his skin crawl. He wasn't afraid, but he wasn't stupid either. If they were planning something, he needed to be ready. That night, as Jason lay in his dorm, he stared at the ceiling, thinking. He had come to this academy to learn, to prove that humans deserved a place among the stars. But now it felt like a battle for survival. And Jason was never one to back down from a fight. "You said." Jason knew something was coming. The tension in the academy halls had shifted. Whispers followed him wherever he went, and even the instructors seemed to keep a closer eye on him. Gorik and his group hadn't tried anything yet, but Jason could feel it. The storm was building. Then it happened. It was late, long after most students had gone to their dorms. Jason had been training alone in the combat simulator, pushing himself harder than ever. Sweat dripped from his brow as he disabled the simulation, the holographic enemies vanishing around him. As he stepped out of the training chamber, he felt it immediately. The halls were too quiet. His instincts screamed at him, danger. He turned the corner and stopped. 5 figures stood in the corridor, blocking his way. Gorik was in the center, arms crossed, flanked by 2 of his usual lackeys. But this time, there were 2 more, a tall reptilian alien with venomous fangs, and another with armored plating covering its body. Jason exhaled. "Really? You brought backup?" Gorik sneered. "You don't get it, human. You embarrassed us. You made us look weak. That's something we do not forgive." Jason rolled his shoulders. "Let me guess. This is the part where you threaten me again." "No," Gorik said, stepping forward. "This is the part where we break you." They rushed him. Jason moved on instinct. He ducked the first swing, rolling to the side as one of the newcomers tried to grab him. He lashed out with a sharp kick, slamming his boot into the reptilian alien's knee. It hissed in pain but didn't go down. A fist flew toward Jason's face. He barely dodged, the force of the punch grazing his cheek. He countered with a sharp elbow to his attacker's ribs, making them stumble. But he was outnumbered. A heavy impact slammed into his back, sending him sprawling to the ground. Before he could recover, a foot pressed down on his chest, pinning him. Jason gritted his teeth as Gorik loomed over him. "You should have known your place," Gorik snarled. "Deathworlder or not, you don't belong here." Jason struggled, but the weight on his chest kept him down. His mind raced. He could fight back, but 5 against 1. That was a losing battle. Then, a new voice cut through the tension. "Enough." The pressure on Jason's chest vanished as his attackers spun toward the source of the voice. A figure stood at the end of the corridor, tall, imposing, their silhouette sharp against the dim lighting. For a moment, Jason couldn't believe what he was seeing. It was an instructor, but not just any instructor. Head Instructor Veros. Silence fell. Veros stepped forward, his gaze cold and unreadable. Fighting in the academy halls, breaking the academy laws, attacking a fellow student. Do you have any idea how serious this is? Gorik stiffened. Instructor, we. Enough, Veros snapped. You will report to the disciplinary council. Now, the attackers hesitated, but under Veros's glare, they had no choice. One by one, they left. Gorick threw Jason a final glare before following. Veros turned to Jason, his expression unreadable. Are you injured? Jason sat up, rubbing his ribs. I'll live. Veros studied him for a moment, then nodded. You are stronger than they expected. That frightens them. Jason exhaled. Yeah, I got that impression. Veros hesitated, then spoke in a lower tone. Be careful, Jason. You have more eyes on you than you realize. With that, he turned and left. Jason sat there for a moment, catching his breath. He had won this round, but something told him this wasn't over. Not even close.